All right. I have that we are going to go right into our keynote speaker, and I'm going to do an introduction for us. And forgive me, I am not quite prepared to do that, but I'm going to do it anyway because I know her well. We are so delighted to have Danyetta Najoli with us this morning. You might have been at a session yesterday where Danyetta co-led about culture. I've been training with her for the last couple of years and have just really learned so much and have enjoyed her spirit and her knowledge greatly in that time. So Danyetta is going to talk to us about re-emerging into the in-person world of supporting others. And so she is wonderful in helping us reflect on and honor and talk about diversity and celebrate diversity and resilience. Danyetta, I will let you add things to this because I know there are many accolades that you have accumulated that would be helpful for people to know. But I'd like to welcome you and thank you deeply for helping us and coming to support us in the gathering this year.
Thank you so much for having me. I am delighted to be here today with you, and I'm going to share my screen just to pull up my presentation. And while I'm doing that, let's see, I'll do a there. Can you still see my screen with the presentation? That's perfect. I always have to confirm. I never want to take that for granted. Listen, I'm delighted to be here today. Welcome everyone to this talk. First of all, I want to thank Kirsten Sancharico for being an amazing administrator and host, and also thank you to Yolanda, Kate, and Debbie for your Zoom support. Thank you to Tanya Richmond. I know she is the chairwoman of the Learning Community for Person-Centered Practices, but Tanya and I have had the pleasure of working together for the past year and a half on person-centered practices and cultural humility in the state of New York, and which happens to be my home state, I might add. But we've been helping people connect cultural humility to what we already know and what we already do to support people from a person-centered perspective. And I've had the pleasure of presenting with others like Bob Sattler, Julia Kinney, and Michael Small, which has been an honor. But I'm sure I don't have to say this to anyone in this group. Tanya is an absolute jewel, and I'm fortunate to have her as my colleague and friend. And she has such a welcoming, down-to-earth spirit about her and a breath of fresh air in this beloved community that I've been fortunate to work in for over 22 years. And a little bit about myself. I want to do that also in the context of showing you a slide. But before I do that, I've worked in this community since 2000, initially as a lead direct support professional. And I also had a second track about 3 months in to do training. So I've been since 2000, been doing training around different topics like behavioral supports and a lot of soft skill trainings like cultural humility, in fact. And I have a small growth mindset and personal foundations practice where I do coaching, some mentoring, and a lot of writing lately around these topics. And so it's nice to be here with you today. And you have heard a little bit about my bio that Tanya mentioned, but you know, a lot of times bios don't really give it justice, right? In terms of knowing the person, or getting a full picture of who the person is. So here are a few pictures that I'd like to, that will bring out, you know, a little bit more of who I am, some of the most important people to me, and some of the roles that I joyfully play, and why I want to be here today. So I grew up in Uptown Manhattan in New York City, which is Harlem. I attended a neighborhood school. It was called Harriet Tubman Elementary School, or PS 154, as I recall it. And it helped to shape me while growing up in St. Nicholas housing projects. We not only survived living in a historically redlined community, but my family thrived despite the circumstances. And at the top right are my family members who are near and dear to me, including my beloved grandfather who raised me, my uncles, one of whom raised me too, and my aunt, who also, even though she wasn't in my household, she also was in the neighborhood and she greatly influenced me, and my two older sisters. Now, noticeably absent are my parents, who both unfortunately passed when I was very young. But my family valued togetherness and education. And because of that, I had the opportunity to attend a small college called Fisk University, where I studied business at the same institution as the late Congressman John Lewis, the poet Nikki Giovanni, and late scholar W.E.B. Du Bois, to name a few. And I've had the chance to cultivate lifelong friendships. Here is a photo of me with my Kenyan-born husband and my two amazing children. Speaking of Kenya, that's me in Nairobi, kind of standing in front of the backdrop there. And on the bottom right is a picture where I'm looking over the Great Rift Valley that spans across the country from north to south Kenya. Of course, the picture doesn't do it justice, I know, but I wanted to share that I've traveled to several other countries while on the way to and from Kenya. So I've visited Kenya about 3 times, and so is my family, my children. So you're looking at someone who has the unlikely story of growing up in Harlem and finding a way to places I would have never thought was possible. And at the center of it all is joy, because it wasn't a straight journey. And that's why it reminds me of where we are as a community today. And so I'd love to take that same thought and begin, the thought of being in one place and traveling to another, bringing with us our lessons learned, our valley experiences, our triumphs, because I truly believe that they all belong. So let's take some time to officially welcome many of you back into your roles of service and supports, including person-centered practitioners, right? Some of you are finding yourselves in new jobs or roles that changed as you serve and support people in a post-ish pandemic world. I think we all understand some of the challenges we as people in the disability community space have lived through. And when I say we, I do mean people with disabilities with all kinds of lived experiences and who are most vulnerable. Direct support staff who may be experiencing work and life challenges, trainers whose job it is to help pin down key learning so that others can do a good job, and possibly frontline supervisors who have had to make sure that everyone is receiving services and supports and that shifts are covered. So if you are here, you made it through a pandemic that no one currently on the planet has ever seen the likes of before. So to put it in perspective, my paternal grandmother, who wasn't pictured there, but she was born in March of 1918, which was the year of the previous pandemic. And my maternal grandfather, who was on the other slide, he was only 15 years old, a year younger than my son. Wow. And we know that by welcoming everyone back, that's not to say that everyone is completely out of the COVID woods. Many are still facing adversity, and some people with disabilities are still among those deemed as devalued when it comes to the care and medical attention given. So my heart does go out to the many family members and friends who have lost loved ones or who are facing long-term health effects. And yet we welcome you back as we collectively heal, learn, and grow together. So take a moment to acknowledge that we are successful and resilient just by virtue of our presence here on this call. So yeah, you can even celebrate with a celebration emoji on your video screen, because this keynote and Keycast will involve interaction, by the way. So as I mentioned, let us celebrate where we have come from together. And we're a learning community, right? So let's celebrate our diverse ways of being together. Let us celebrate our defiant and even radical joy. And we'll get into joy a little later in this talk. But we all come from different backgrounds and different lived experiences, but we all beautifully land on the same mission: to serve and support people to live a life filled with good things, good people, and good places, as each person defines what is good. What we have learned, especially over the past few years, is that it's so important to get what you need in order to show up in the most authentic way, right? And unapologetic way that you can. And the biggest reason that we want to do this is so that you will give the people you support the unspoken permission to do the same. We need a world where we can all show up and add value to our communities and continue to shape the larger culture for the better. And we are learning to celebrate our uniqueness and individuality, that makes up not only our work teams and our organizations, but also that make up our communities, our friendships, and our families, bringing together and unifying the whole in a beautiful array, much like these different shells. You know, I traveled one year with some girlfriends of mine to Amelia Beach near Jacksonville, Florida. Excuse me. And we focused and we actually found so many beautiful seashells. I held on to these in particular to put in my family fish tank over the years. And I still have tons left over. So there were so many that we collected. These shells were washed ashore intact, but when they are left in the ocean and put under pressure by the weight of the waves and refined, they make beautiful sand. We have been through a sort of refining process, haven't we? Over those, last few years, and those who could choose to remain have come out wiser and more committed than ever. So I want to just iterate that you are doing significant work to support people every day, whether it's in their homes or on their jobs or in their communities, or supporting people to do these very things as a trainer. And if you're like me, you probably encountered a few challenges at times around understanding and getting to know the person so that you can ultimately support them better. I found that when I have an awareness of who the person is, which could adjust depending upon their environment and the people in it, I can be of better support. And who the person is has a lot to do with the person's culture. That's the way the person does things, whether individually or an agreed upon way of doing things within a group to which the person belongs, right? Like a family or a social group. And I found that developing a strong sense of cultural humility will take me so much farther in successfully supporting people. To bring it home, part of my personal culture is to give honor to my elders and to those who have come before to pave the way, which is why I spent some time in my intro showing positive regard to my beloved elders and my family, and also thanking those who helped to create this opportunity for me to share with you today. It's also safe to say that giving honor and thanks is a part of my African cultural group, where we almost always honor our ancestors and those who paved the way. So this brings me to cultural humility, which is a lifelong commitment to self-reflection and personal critique, to addressing the power imbalances that oftentimes are built into the leader-member relationship. And these are the types of relationships that we can definitely relate to, because many of these relationships we find ourselves in or we have witnessed, such as a mentor and a person being mentored, or a doctor and a patient, or even a provider and a person receiving supports and services, right? So cultural humility is hinged upon the lifelong use of self-reflection and self-critique, but it's actually for the purposes of developing mutually beneficial partnerships with people and with communities, and sometimes on behalf of people. So there's a purpose there. And cultural humility means that we are always growing and learning about ourselves in very meaningful ways. There's also a fair amount of institutional accountability with cultural humility, where organizations can assist in making it easier for cultural humility to become a core value in the workplace and within institutional settings. So there's a lot of organizational learning involved as well. So it's not always easy to evaluate or critique ourselves on our, and when it comes to our teams or even the groups that we belong to or organizations. So just remember that this will take practice and maybe even enlisting help from others whose feedback we trust. Because if you're like me, it's not always easy to just say, bring on the self-critique, bring on the self-evaluation. It's not something that just is a muscle memory. But gently becoming more self-aware is the first step to developing cultural humility. I feel like cultural humility and self-awareness kind of go hand in hand. Self-awareness is really low-hanging fruit to begin. So on the right, the Venn diagram shows a way to consider culture when supporting and serving others. And if you were in yesterday's breakout session that Tanya and I co-led, you saw this very beautiful version. Thank you, Tanya. Cultural competence is knowing that something needs to be done to appreciate someone else's culture and also knowing why it is important. And cultural proficiency, I think of that as skillfully interacting with others. So others who are actually different from us, which that's everyone else. So this is about the act of doing that well, though. And I'm sure we can think of someone we know who seems to interact very well with people from all walks of life, right? From different ethnic groups or racial groups, religious or political backgrounds, for instance. You know, my grandfather used to say, people are people, when I was growing up. And this motto really plays out in being culturally proficient, because if people are like you and me as part of the human race, then we are more alike than we are different. And we can use our differences to add value to one another and to our communities. And so this makes us better able to skillfully interact with others who are different from us. And if cultural competence and cultural proficiency is what we know about a person and what to do when interacting with a person, then cultural humility is what we don't yet know about a person. And it's also where actually they have all the expertise. And having cultural humility means we desire to want to know that which we don't yet know about a person. So it's really about being and staying curious in a respectful and natural and authentic way. And I'm very grateful that cultural humility can develop as the relationships grows and develops, because we can benefit from having many touches and many ways to practice. You know, one of my favorite parts of cultural humility is you and I, as the person providing services, can develop our own lifelong practice of self-reflection and self-evaluation in a healthy way, so that ultimately the person we are supporting can experience a better life, and live in a better community and experience a better social culture. And for all of us who have a love of learning, cultural humility can really make our time spent working with others come alive. I approach the person that I'm working with as a fellow human first, as a colleague and a co-conspirator, hacking the social constructs other people place them in, and changing the narrative of what people believe about people with disabilities. And I believe the person feels it too, even if they're not always able to fully express it in a way that you and I might be able to. It shows up in the respectful relationships that we have and in the trust that we've earned in order to help the person grow and hopefully fulfill social value, social roles, and build more connections. And so when we have all three of these, competence, proficiency, and humility, working together while we are supporting another person, we are simply making a good habit, a good solid habit of using person-centered cultural humility. So in my mind, cultural competence is what to do and why to do it. Cultural proficiency is how to do it. And cultural humility is the desire to want to learn about the other person and lean in. And many of you are already practicing what I call person-centered cultural humility. Now, I'm not going to read all of these. I just want to say that up front. But yesterday in my breakout set presentation with Tanya Richmond, I shared 10 commitments of person-centered cultural humility that we have been developing over the past year, like we had mentioned. And this will be available for download on the landing page, just so you know. And many of you, like I mentioned before, have already ascribed to these, yet we can all use reminders. I know if you're like me, I can always use a reminder. And I won't read all of them, but as we ascribe to a set of commitments and agreements, we actively and routinely flex our muscles around things like appreciation of our own culture first and the other person's culture, hospitality, acceptance, empathy, curiosity, open-mindedness, and joy in order to be in a more culturally humble space. And also, let me just go down here. We spend time bravely self-reflecting and self-critiquing so we can better support others. And we are willing to learn from new information and even unlearn old information that's completely unuseful to us, so that we can be preventing us, that may be preventing us from being culturally humble in our approaches. And we recognize that power imbalances are often baked into certain types of relationships that we find ourselves in, and we strive for power with rather than power over. This last set of commitments do strive to support people to show up well in their own neighborhoods, their own communities, or their communities of interest, so that people can experience beneficial partnerships and better cultures. And if we are in a role where we can help create a more culturally humble environment, whether it be in a workplace or in the community, then we commit to doing so. And so that's really what the 10 commitments of person-centered cultural humility is about, because life takes on a whole new meaning when we begin to learn about ourselves and each other, including the people we support. So my hope is that you will be able to be challenged to learn one new thing about yourself and a person you support. Bonus points if you learn about yourself in relation to the person you're working with. See what naturally rises in terms of your own curiosity about another person. These are the seeds of self-awareness that I was talking about earlier, which sprouts into self-reflection and ultimately self-evaluation. Allow them to take root and grow into something beautiful. So now I would like to hear from you. I have a big question mark here because I'd love to hear from you. I believe we have a lot of people on this call. I usually like to check that out, but I'd like to know if you will actually answer in the chat, that would be great. But here are some questions, and basically, I know it'll be mostly in the chat, but we will have some time to hear directly from maybe one or two people possibly. But here's how we're going to do it, since there are so many awesome people here. If you would kindly use the raise hand feature on Zoom, then we'll ask you to unmute yourself as we welcome you by name to the floor. But we may not, like I said, may not have time to hear from everyone, but please use the chat. But think in terms of over the past 2 to 3 years. Here are the questions. What have we already learned about ourselves and those we serve and support just in the last few years? What things might we retain from the virtual world that we're currently thrusted into? Some kicking and screaming, some of us are welcoming it with open arms, right? And then where might we want to apply any new knowledge that we have gained? And where have we found rekindled joy or new joy in our meaningful and significant work of supporting others to have more fulfilled lives? So those are the questions. I'll leave this up there on the screen, and I'd really love to hear from you. Feel free to put a response into the chat, and let me see if there's some folks that have their hands raised already. Okay, Hourglass.
Yes, this is Adrienne. Hello, everybody. Yes, and in this Danyetta, I'm sorry, the picture is so little. Hi, hon. Oh, thank you for inviting me. I appreciate you. In my work as a holistic wellness minister and serving to help people to realize that if they give their bodies what it needs, it will heal itself. I have learned, especially during this time, that it's all about life experiences. And we are all similar in those ways. So that is what I have newly learned, that people just want to know that they want to be relatable with whoever they are in community with. They want to know that there are shared experiences. And I'm sorry, I'm gonna put my unreleased the video here. So telling stories, testimonies, what has Adrienne done? What has worked for Adrienne? And if it worked for her, then hey, I love, know, and trust her. let's just do this. I'm gonna try this, or I'm gonna try to think differently. I'm gonna listen because she's been through it. So that's what I've learned. And the virtual world has allowed me, even though during COVID there was some strain, but I had to learn how to use what I had in front of me, like we all do, and adjust. So for me, COVID has been sweet because it's allowed me to reach more people. Some people didn't want to come to me like they normally would. We did video chats and phone calls that worked just fine. There was some emailing of documents and different things, and we just made it work. So I say that to say this: just use what you have, be relatable, and serve in a genuine way, and people will receive that, and they'll appreciate you for that.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Adrian. Definitely, those are rich nuggets. I heard a lot there. Showing up and hearing stories of lived experiences that added value. And then I will take one more from Lindsay Spoon, and then I'm going to read a few from the chat.
Jennifer can go. She had her hand up.
Oh, I didn't see that. I'm sorry. Thank you, Jennifer, then Lindsay. Jennifer, you want to share?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I changed my mind.
Okay, no worries. All right. You can feel free to put it in the chat if you want to, but Lindsay, you can go ahead and share.
Okay, well, for me, myself personally, what have I learned about myself and the people that I'm friends with, being that I am a self-advocate, is just our need for connection, because the isolation can be so much for us, especially in a virtual world like this. So just the need for connection. I know my ED, my executive director of my state DD council, has started meeting with us every other day, just to keep that connection going. And we just talk about anything and everything. What do I think I might retain from this virtual world is not having to go anywhere. It's opened up so many opportunities for me to have speaking engagements, have different opportunities that I wouldn't necessarily be able to, like attending my first gathering last year. I got the opportunity to attend the Portland gathering last year, and I didn't have to go anywhere. So that's been great. And I just feel like how we might be able to apply the knowledge gained is, how do we keep that isolation from happening when we go back into the in-person world? How do we keep that connection going between the people that we support and ourselves? And how do we maintain a level of professionalism with still being person-centered? So, yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. You said a lot there, and I know I have a lot of questions there to get everyone talking. So it's great to see the feedback also in the chat. And I was hearing you say that the isolation was a big thing, but then also looking at the opportunities that came because of the virtual platform. And so it's kind of a two-edged sword, right, in many ways. And then some people talked about learning what things can be done virtually versus what things really do need to be done in person. And just getting us thinking about that. This has thrusted us into that space. So thank you all for sharing. And you can feel free to
I totally agree with Lindsay.
sharing. Okay, Jennifer. Wonderful. Thank you for saying that, for affirming that. And I'm gonna go ahead and go on here, because I see that there's so many wonderful pieces here in the chat as well. Returning to traditional services when people are absent, and the opportunities to participate with our peers and collaborate has increased. lots of good feedback. Keep that coming. And it's good for everyone to kind of sharpen each other with that, with the feedback that you put in. Basically, it also is so important for us to bear witness to the joy we have in our work and to share the ways we have remained resilient and creative, holding space and giving thought to these types of questions and not having a period at the end, but having a question and being open to that. It really helps us to support and serve others with greater intentionality. And so it helps us to discover the joy in nearly everything we are doing, if we can possibly help it. And sometimes we find joy, and sometimes, the joy finds us, quite frankly, it does. It finds us in our lives when we live it. And when we find the joy in our lives, it can continue to translate to the service and the support that we provide to others if we're in that role. Sometimes we have to dig deep and fan the light to rekindle the flames and rediscover new interests, in this new world. A lot of times, things have shifted a bit alongside the person, and find new points of connections to help make the time come alive when we are working to build a better life with and for the person. Now, I've been a fellow at an organization that teaches support teams how to facilitate something called trauma-informed biographical timelines on behalf of people we support who are facing a lot of mental health challenges. Before I became a fellow for that organization, I was a part of their third cohort that ran monthly for 6 months. And we learned how to facilitate these very non-systemy timelines so that the team could increase their empathy and support for a person who experienced trauma that sometimes start in the womb, in vitro, and for whom oftentimes the trauma is still present. And thanks to Shauna Hall for reminding me that there can also be little tiny bits of trauma happening every single day, like 1,000 tiny cuts, where just one more thing can be all that it needs to take, right? But I want to share a quote here, but Dr. Adrienne Kennedy, who has been working with us in these timeline trainings, really takes the time to encourage us to move in the direction of whatever brings you joy and to absolutely center your life and work around joy. That has become one of my new learning practices, I must say. In fact, I started to play with the idea of finding joy in nearly everything. And I even made it into a rule as some sort of twist on my mind. You got to kind of hack your own mind sometimes. So why not make it a personal rule that you will show up with joy? I challenge you to find the joy, or continue to find the joy, for those that are already just bouncing along. Let's see what happens when we center joy and pleasure at the heart of our work. To me, finding joy means celebrating the resilience in ourselves and the people we support, in our teammates, in our colleagues, and in the people in our community that show up. So let's celebrate some of your accomplishments and achievements. This is the last time we're going to get some interaction, and we'll do it in the chat here. We built this in to interact. I'd love for you to share what's one fun or challenging thing you've learned how to do recently. This will be very interactive, so let's get some participation in the chat. And just remember, there's no right or wrong answers at all. Please share with us by just dropping it in the chat space. What's one fun thing or stretchy thing that you've learned how to do that you never did before, say, the spring of 2020? And as you're putting those things in, one of the things I learned to do over the past few years is to learn how to make buttermilk biscuits. Never did that before. And I said, wow, this is so easy. Everybody, should be doing this. I also learned how to make soy sauce, and I taught my 2 kids how to cut a pineapple. We actually learned that together. That was super fun. But yes, all of mine are food related. I know, I'm working on that. But what about you? Okay, so we got a lot of people sharing so many things. Okay, cutting. Okay, let me turn up the thing here. How to train virtually, long distance running. Okay, somebody said Zumba. Took improvisational comedy and getting live gigs now. Wow. Great. Learning how to use a virtual platform. That's coming up a lot, right? Great. Taking a step back and reflecting on purpose of what we do to help us guide us in our efforts. Great. I love how you put that in there too, Jessica, because the other thing is that it doesn't have to be something tangible, right? It doesn't have to be something tangible. It could be something like, meeting new neighbors, right? Meeting new neighbors. That's what we did as well. We had some new neighbors come in and we went out. My husband being from Kenya, it's a collective mentality. So his muscle memory is to go and meet people. Myself being a native New Yorker is to not necessarily just go and meet people, not naturally. So we met some neighbors and we shared in our garden that we had. So it's been great. So keep sharing. I love that. Let's see, we have several things in the chat people have said. Let's see what's something new. Veggie gardening, great. Someone just moved. Learn how to play video games, spend some time with son, taught 6-year-old son how to snorkel. Nice. Some technical stuff that they learned, how to edit forms. Perfect. So you've shared some amazing things that you've learned how to do. And I bet many of you surprised even yourselves, right, in the process. I applaud you for trying new things that are fun and challenging, especially over the past few years. Now, to keep the momentum kind of going, here's what I would like to do to keep the momentum going on learning to do new things outside of your comfort zone. I'm providing everyone with a complimentary annual life planner as a fun way to help guide you through your very own self-discovery and personal growth journey. So now I do recognize that some of you may have been used to doing a slightly similar person-centered like annual process. This is not exactly the same thing for the people you support, but this time you get to do it for yourself. And this will be available for download on the landing page. And just to let you know, I usually pull this out myself and start using it toward the end of each year, just to help me prepare for the next year, get my thinking kind of geared toward what do I want to see, what do I want to be doing. But it can be used and revisited anytime. And it asks questions like, who are the key people I want to get to know? And more times than not, I will not know the person's name because, maybe I don't know that person yet, but maybe I'm looking to get to know a type of person. So I jot that down. Then as I put that energy and positivity out there, a person with all those qualities eventually appears. I'm a big believer of that. I've seen it happen too much to say otherwise. And I see some nodding heads too. What are the problems I want to resolve? What have we been ruminating over and over and over again with no real solution? How can we turn the problem on a different angle maybe and see it in another perspective? Might that give us a little bit more insight? And are there others who we can actually bring in to help us to resolve the problems and, just make it go away through. So basically, if you're like me, I tend to want problems to just go away just by thinking about it. But wouldn't a short conversation with someone for a few minutes, to get it out of our heads help immensely? And that's what this is meant to do. And another question is in the annual planner is, what do I want or need to let go of? I know for me, there's some things I try to hold on tightly to. I have 2 teenage kids. And right now, my husband and I are experiencing temporary empty nesting because they're both either away at camp or at a summer portal and they're out of town. And so I'm like, I have to let go. I have to be able to let go and let them fly a bit. But there's an exercise I do with some of my coaching colleagues and co-creators called letting go. Together, we identify what are the 2 to 3 things that we need or want to release. And we would imagine those things floating away, far away from our minds, so we can no longer take them back into our hands and hold on to them. And so we can create space for more purposeful things. That's why we let go. And I know this is not always easy to do, so I'm not trying to simplify it. And I do recognize it does take practice. So, just want to congratulate you again on your resilience and on your perspective. Speaking of perspective, it makes me wonder how it must have been and how it must have felt to land on the moon and to look at our entire planet, right? What a perspective. Problems, challenges, and failing forward all instantly fall in the right perspective. how much more in our valued relationships with those we serve and support, or our colleagues and others. Sometimes all we have to do is just change our vantage point or perspective, and it can really make a bit of a difference. And as we develop new ways of learning and doing, then we can commit to new learning. You know, in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey talks about an upward spiral. Many of you may be familiar with this, of learning, doing, and committing to new learning. And as you continue to work in our beloved community, I encourage you to just develop a learning practice of your own. That's what I've recently been more conscious of doing, and it's been making a big difference for me, so that you can decide on how and what you will learn, no matter where you are and what you're doing. So as I close, I'm looking at the time too. Let's see, we've got about 4 minutes. Yes, we'll try to wrap it up, land the plane. I just want to share an image with you that I have here. You know, with the work I've been incredibly fortunate to do as a co-developer of the Black American Tree Project to help build awareness and capacity for healing, particularly around the unique Black American experience, I've been drawn to trees. Their overstory that serves as a canopy of leaves and branches, providing shade from the hot sun and highways for animals to navigate, and the understory with its intricate web of roots and rhizomes that communicate with each other and give life to the ground beneath us. Not to mention the tree's delicious fruit-bearing qualities, right? Fun fact, did you actually know that the fig tree will go as far as 400 feet deep to find groundwater? That's incredible to me, it'll always be. But the quote says, you know, I'm learning to change my thinking from this too shall pass to this too belongs. And this makes for more space for life's sorrows to be valued just as much as the joy and delight. Now, I'm not suggesting that we tell someone to heap on all the sorrows and the misery, you know, but this too belongs is a friendly reminder to me that joy and pain are oftentimes two sides of the same coin, especially when we are in community with one another with its unexpected twists and turns. So as you continue to live your lives as a person, either with a disability or as you continue to serve and support others in their valued roles, remember that it all belongs, and continue to be the one to hold brave space for the people you support and are around to also experience the joys and lows and everything in between. And sometimes this means being a little vulnerable and humanizing ourselves so that we really see the human that we're interacting with. You're all change makers. Every day you support others to connect to their community, to live happy, healthy, safe, and strong lives, a life filled with dignity and respect. And you are changing their lives for the better, and not only their lives, but while you're in the process of changing their lives, you are made better for it. So I just want to thank you for this time.
Danyetta, thank you. This has been amazing. I love This Too Belongs. I've heard you say it before, but you know, I think I'm going to just start saying it more. And you've been amazing. And everybody in the chat is just agreeing and thanking you and telling you how much they really appreciate this. So thank you for being here. I told you maybe a couple of years ago, a year and a half ago, that you would fit right in, and you do. So thanks for being here with us, and please continue to be with us. We need you.
I will look forward to it. And I love this community. I definitely feel it through virtual space. And I just want to say, I'm going to send you all a link to a complimentary ebook that I have today. And this is the link here, but I'm going to put it in the chat right now. And also and this is basically helping you with like gaining confidence. And there's a bonus evaluator at the end. Don't worry about the word evaluator. Don't get freaked out by that. It just helps you to see where you are. And then the other thing is that this same book is available on audio as well through audible.com. And there's a way to actually reach that link, and I'll send you that link. You do have to get on like Audible itself to get like a 3-month free membership. But if you are interested and you don't want to get the free membership, just reach out to me directly and I'll get you a credit, because I can give you like credits for it too. So you can just get it that way. But I want to make sure I leave y'all with lots of gifts because I really appreciate this time.
Thank you so much, Danyetta. That's very generous.